Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Krishna Kumar, and I'm part of Emergeway Academy and one of its directors. We are a training company, and we primarily work with engineering and management colleges. We provide students application-based training, and we also help them find their chosen careers. Okay, we work with about 100 odd companies and help place students also into the industry. So our flagship programs are aimed at grooming engineering and management graduates to be future leaders. We also work with multiple corporates and offer them a wide variety of training, basically in terms of competency building and consulting services. Today's topic is very relevant to us, and we are very pleased to be hosting this panel discussion. I'd actually like to introduce Dr. Prasad, who's going to be your anchor for today's discussion. And after his introduction, I'll let him introduce the panelists, and we'll get on to the panel discussion. So Dr. Prasad is an engineer and PhD in management and an expert in air conditioning, operations management, Lean, Six Sigma, and theory of constraints. He is a Six Sigma belt holder, black belt holder, and he's got about 30 plus years of experience coming from very large companies like Voltas, iGate, Barry Wehmiller, and Pavni Engineers. He is a visiting faculty to a lot of these B schools and universities. He works closely with University of Hyderabad, Jawaharlal Nehru Technical University, and many others. He has published many papers in peer-reviewed journals. He is a very passionate trainer and loves to be amid students. He is going to be a moderator also for the day and the session. So let me request Prasad to briefly introduce the panelists, and we'll get started with the discussion. I'm just going to go mute.
Thank you, KK. Thanks for that brief introduction. Welcome, everybody. It's a very warm afternoon, rather very hot afternoon, at least in Hyderabad. For those who are staying in some other places, maybe I don't know, but here it is really, really hot outside. And the topic we have also is very hot. Changes in management education in VUCA world. Uncertainty is the only certainty today. Uncertainty is the spotlight that reveals your leadership. So, leadership is under question now. There are a number of disruptions to our business world today. Some are man-made, some are forced. World is going through volatility like never before. Complexity and ambiguity are prevailing over simplicity and certainty today. India struggles to reopen the economy and business post-lockdown 4.0. And we have seen already the number of cases are already growing up. There is always, the challenge between lives and livelihood. Business leaders are scrambling to deal with wide variety of issues. Disruption of India's intertwined supply chains. Economic activities concentrated in designated red zones. Surge in COVID-19 cases, and so on and so forth. The staggering impact of COVID-19 on education system across the length and breadth of the country is unlike we have seen earlier. Unable to deliver on-campus learning, institutions of higher education have scrambled to provide academic continuity through emergency remote teaching. Though in India, most of the people, and particularly the rural areas, are not having enough network and bandwidth for attending the classes through the remote teaching. Business schools need to evolve a response framework that looks beyond the immediate emergency actions. It looks like the future is going to be the new normal. That is, working more from offshore, or the physical distancing. Lots of things will be coming into play very soon. Now, how are we going to cope up with the continued volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and chaos, the VUCA, through experiential learning? And matter of fact, we don't have any experience about this even earlier. So how are we going to go through this situation? At the same time, what is the industry looking forward from these MBA students? What are the expectations of the industry? So, ladies and gentlemen, let us discuss with the eminent speakers today who are on the panel. I thank each one of them for sparing time to be part of this elite panel and wonderful knowledge sharing session. I'm sure we all will have at least some takeaways to, after this 1.5 hour session, we'll certainly have some takeaways and to take it forward how the world looks like post-COVID, at least in the education system. Let me introduce you the speakers briefly, not in any specific order. So we have here Dr. G.V.R.K. Acharyulu. Acharyulu Garu is a professor in operations and supply chain management, coordinator for MBA Healthcare and Hospital Management at the School of Management Studies, University of Hyderabad in Hyderabad. He did his bachelor's in chemical engineering from Andhra University, master's from NIT Warangal, then his MBA from Usmania University, PhD in supply chain management from the same university. He is an eternal learner. He has over 19 years of teaching experience and 10 years of industry experience in supply chain management, research methodology, information systems, hospital management, and so on and so forth. He has published 20 research papers in national and 22 international journals in the areas of supply chain, healthcare management, published 10 books. He has presented various research papers at international conferences held in USA, Australia, Singapore, Thailand, and Dubai. 8 scholars were awarded PhD under supervision in the areas of supply chain and healthcare. 5 PhD scholars are still doing. He is the recipient of many awards, and I think, if I start reading this, I need at least another 2-3 hours just for the CV. So let's welcome Professor Acharyulu Garu here. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us today. Now we have Professor K.C. John. He is a director, mentor, MHB Academy. He is adept at simultaneously balancing several successful careers in the spheres of technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, and sustainable development for over 30 years. Professor John navigates actively as educator, coach, mentor, entrepreneur, and often sits on the board of pre- and post-IPO companies as independent director. Earned a doctorate degree in management from IIM Ahmedabad. Currently, he is a distinguished professor at Great Lakes Institute of Management, responsible for establishing a global education program in entrepreneurship along with Technology Incubation Center focused on artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, machine learning, analytical algorithm, and blockchain technologies. Successfully offered courses on design thinking, innovation, building innovative and sustainable programs, and pre- and post-executive MBA programs. So there are still a large number of achievements and a wonderful person at heart. We welcome you, sir, Professor John. Thank you very much for accepting and be the panelist of today's. Mr. Kashyap Kompella, he's at the core, is a connector, explorer, and an opportunity creator. He is the founder of Advisely and an AI-driven learning and assessments platform impacting the higher education. He is a blockchain technology enthusiast and co-founded Blockchain India community and leads it in Hyderabad. He is also chapter director of Startup Grind Hyderabad, where they help the startup ecosystem by sharing knowledge and enable people connect and grow at www.startupgrind.com. His interests are in product, business innovation, education, science, technology, medical health technologies, AI, ML, IoT, and so many. Welcome to the panel discussion, Mr. Kashyap. Thank you for being here today. Mr. Ramesh Revuru, he is the head digital COE and digital integration at L&T IT Services. 25 years of experience with product development and IT service companies, author of 2 well-researched books, that is IT, Get a Software Job. Article on SOA was ranked among top 10 articles by Profit Oracle magazine for the year 2011. He's a regular speaker, keynote speaker at conferences including TIPCO conferences, annual IP Summit, Collaborate, OIUG, UK, and GITEX. He's a CSM, CSP, and PMP certified, got lots of patents awarded. He's BE Electronics, MS Software Engineering, MBA Operational Research, Entrepreneurship and Innovation from Stanford University, and he is a vivid learner and voracious reader. A warm welcome to Mr. Ramesh Rebul. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. Now, Professor S.S. Prasad Rao Garu, his CV is, you can write one book on this. He's a director, Center of Learning and Sustainability, Geetham University. He has held several administrative portfolios in Geetham University, such as Director, Academic Affairs, and so on and so forth. He's a founder, dean, and director of Hyderabad Business School, founding director, Internal Quality Assurance Cell, and founder director of Geetham Center of Distance Learning, and so on. He also served as secretary, chairman of the Association of Indian Management Schools, AP chapter, and executive board member of AIMS. He is also a member of many professional bodies. He is the author of 4 standard textbooks, also presented several research papers in national and international conferences and published national and international journals. He is a peer reviewer of Emerald Group Publishing. He is a recipient of many awards during his illustrious career, like Dronacharya Award was presented by International Knowledge and Opportunities Network, Mahatma Gandhi Gold Medal Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement, and he's a thought leader in management education by National HR Association of India. The most unassuming and humble Professor Prasad Rao Garu, we are honored to welcome you here. Thank you very much, sir. We start with you, sir, Prasad Rao Garu. Kindly share your views on the topic, changes in the management education system. What are the changes that you think we need? Prasad Rao Garu.
Good afternoon, everyone present here. I'm really very much excited to be part of this galaxy of professionals and participants. It's a privilege for me to share my little yarn with everyone here. Friends, there are around 5,000 business schools or management institutions offering management education in the country. Out of 500, 20 institutions are national level institutes of eminence like IIMs, and around 30 tier 2 business schools almost on par with IIMs, and around 270 standalone institutions, and the rest all either affiliated to universities or departments of universities. So this is what the management education is being offered as an affiliated institute or a standalone institute, and institutes of national importance. Friends, among all these institutions, whatever is that 10% grads coming out of the national level institutions, particularly IIMs and next level institutions, are able to sustain with what all the challenges are, changes happening across the world. But the problem here is the bottom of the pyramid. There are 3,225 institutions of this kind. Imagine, they are all getting MBA degree, they are all coming to the field saying that they are also management professionals. But what is that we are expecting and what is that they are delivering? That's the important point for all of us. Particularly, these challenges I could understand based on the experiences of my own students and my own experiences with the industry professionals. I wish to make only 5 points, bullet point slide. Out of these institutions, what the management students or professionals or teachers or the practicing consultants should understand 5 important things. The management education is an integration of all the functional area of management. It is not only a part of communication or financial management or HR or operations, whatever it is. It is the integration of all functional areas of management, number 1. Number 2, management education is not the program to study. This is a program one has to do. That is very important. Then third point, the management professionals, we should treat them as leaders. They are not confined to a particular role. Everyone should take it as a leadership role and everyone should be ready to lead the team from the front. And next, number four, the management professionals should have macro perspective. And number five, they should be prepared for the VUCA world. This is what disruptions are happening across the world. Nobody knows what is going to happen next year. Earlier, the average age of the companies used to be 45, 50 years, but now that age has come down to 4 to 6 years. Even this kind of pandemics are giving opportunity to come out with different set of organizations. This is really the best example. The present day situation is the example for VUCA world. And the next important point is the management education or the professionals should never take it as a ladder. And the career, it's a step model. They should always be ready, with some basic knowledge and acquired knowledge, then go for the next level. So this is what they need to learn, update, and go for the next level. And that is possible only with the blended learning. That's what is expected, among all the management students. No doubt, there are 10% or 20% of the students are prepared for the VUCA world, but the 80% are still there. We need to bring them to this level with this kind of, education or gyan. I'm sure everybody now will realize and take it to the next level. That's what my point for the time being. 20% are ready. There is no doubt. Top level institutions are preparing them, and there are grads ready to take up the positions. No doubt. But the next level we need to look at. Prasad Garu.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So what you say is, you are given very small gist, out of which I really like the management professionals are like leaders. And leadership is the most important thing, particularly during this uncertainty. With this, I would like to go to Professor John. Professor John, what is your take on what are the challenges in the current education system?
Thank you very much, Prasad Garu. It's a delight to join this distinguished panel. I'm sure all of you have heard the word unprecedented. Whether you like it or not, all of us say that this is an unprecedented challenge which the entire world is facing. And there are two periods now. There is a BC, before coronavirus, and AC, after coronavirus. We do not know when the AC would come after coronavirus. We have experienced BC, before coronavirus. We have experienced coronavirus right now, where we have lockdown. Most of the world has lockdown. And after lockdown 4.0, we are encouraging all businesses to start. And starting after 2 months of lockdown will take some time. Yeah. So in terms of challenges, what we see is the business world, the educational institutions, as well as world at large, have to appreciate that there is no more, we are not living in a stable world. Whatever we have been used to has been in a stable world where we optimize. In a business education, business school, the focus has been that, hey, we run a stable industry, we run a stable company, we know our customers, we have developed our business model, let's optimize and implement. That world has disappeared. All of us need to recognize that we are entering a world where each one of us would have to figure out how to operate in the world which is very unstable. And you, Prasad Garu, introduced the word VUCA, volatility. Now the volatility which we are experiencing is because of a virus. And it has a component of health. We are all scared today in terms of how it would have impact our health. What all studies have emerged shows that it's like any other influenza, and the fatality rate could be ranging between 0.1 to 0.2%. But what the lockdowns have ensured is that all of us are scared. So we need to move out and decide that scare mindset is not going to help us. So I would like to suggest three things. Number one, we need to embrace a growth mindset. Growth mindset is where we recognize that the world which we are entering is very different. We need to make a sense of it, and we need to, like all scientists, create hypotheses. If these are the situation, then if we take this action, this is likely to result. And then we experiment and see if we get those results or not. If we don't get those results, we formulate our hypothesis. So I have been doing a research right now where I've been looking at how in the world different leaders have grappled with the world during coronavirus. And I find that those who came with this growth mindset, where they said that we want to learn how coronavirus itself is emerging and how do we tackle with it, they are going to be much more successful. So that's number one. Number two, gone are the days when we could implement received knowledge. We need to generate more on-the-spot knowledge through experiment, trial and learning, validate from customers' perspective what would work, what would not work, scale them up. So that's the number second, experimentation. And number three is iteration. All of us have been trained to jump straight away into solution. And what we recognize today is that not only the nature of virus is not understood, the world which is going to emerge after we open up is also not known. So it's not the solution which we should get obsessed. We should be focused on the problem and iterate through series of solutions to figure out which one would work, scale it, which one doesn't work, abandon it. So three things. Number one, embrace growth mindset. There are two mindsets, growth mindset, fixed mindset. If we are looking at the world from a fixed mindset, many things which we have experienced may not work. So we are saying that, hey, we need to learn, evolve, generate hypothesis, experiment, validate, and move forward. That's number one. Number two, experimentation. Solutions are not known. We need to iterate and see which solutions would work, scale them up. Number three, look at how do we evolve in an interdependent world. And that's the three things which I would like to leave with you. Thank you, Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Professor John. A really interesting growth mindset, experiential learning, and iteration. I have a few questions noted down already here. I'll come back to you after I go with a few other panelists and let us look at what they want to say. So, Professor Acharyalu Garu, you are now from a government institute, a central university. So, what are the different challenges for you compared to a deemed university, which Prasad Rao Garu is having, and an experiential learner, what Professor John is saying? So, what are the typical challenges that you have from a central university perspective?
So, good afternoon to the respected panelists and also the participants. And I'm very happy to associate with this nice panel discussion, which is very contemporary environment, and also the VUCA environment. So we are now looking at the VUCA environment. This is not new to the countries. There are so many times, so many VUCA environments we have faced, but this is a typical VUCA environment that we are going to face. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, as you already said. But since from the government university perspective, there are a lot of challenges. How do we cope up with the changes in the environment? So from the management education point of view, management changes in the management education are enormous. So this is unprecedented, actually unprecedented and unexpected, unpredicted environment, and also you can see that a lot of changes are happening in the academic education from the management perspective. So we are now actually from our university perspective, we are facing a lot of challenges in admission process and examination process and course curriculum, course delivery, and also different classroom, how do you conduct the classes, how do you continue the classes. So with this, we are now trying to adapt to the technology, using of technology. So that the students' engagement and faculty engagement. Now we are in the holidays. Now from first onwards, we are going to reopen. So how the students are going to behave, and how do we engage the students using technology? We have already started adopting the technology, and now the faculty engagement. So the training of faculty is very important. So many of the faculty may not be knowing the new digital technologies that are very important, and that is very crucial. So here, what I want to say is, this is actually blessing in disguise. This COVID-19 pandemic is really a catalyst for development. So to take it in a positive aspect, and if you see the academic environment, particularly in government institutes, agility is very important. Agility and responsiveness is very important, and of course leadership. We have a UGC and AICTE and MHRD. They are going to give the guidelines from time to time, but how do you implement in a real perspective, and what is the real situation, that is very important. So that's why I'll give you the from my perspective, the COVID, that acronym for COVID, the changing environment, so uncertain environment. So C is a connectivity. C is the connectivity. All institutions need bandwidth or fiber, optic fiber. That's what C. And the second point is O. O is online. So the content generation is very important. How do we shift from traditional teaching to the paradigm shift? The paradigm shift to traditional teaching to the online teaching. So content generation is very important, and delivery is also one of the aspects to be considered. And V is virtual classroom platform. And also we are using blended classroom delivery. So virtual class, how do we develop virtual classroom? How do we digitalize the classroom so that the students will be engaged? I is interface with online proctor exam platforms. That means when you are conducting online examinations, how do you ensure that students are really concentrating on the exam, and also how are they following ethical practices? So all these things will be taken into consideration. Then D is digital data storage. This is a very important challenge. How do you store the data? A lot of data will be generated. So how do we engage a cloud server? How do we store in the cloud so that we can access the services, data server? So this is about the COVID. Coming to the VUCA environment from the management education perspective. So volatility is, that the changing environment, changing dynamic environment and unpredicted environment, and as a manager, as an administrator, as a leader, so you have to take a decision in the unpredicted environment, uncertainty environment. So you should have a clear vision in this aspect. So unless you have a clear vision, so you cannot succeed the volatility environment. And coming to uncertainty environment, uncertainty is actually you have to take a decision, and uncertainty is a risk environment. You are taking risk. What is going to happen? Suppose if you introduce a particular technology, if you have a particular curriculum, particular course design, so how it is going to happen? We cannot see, but you have to implement it with the risk. That is uncertainty. And complexity is, so since management education is interdependent, so how do you look at the interdependency, understand the interdependency, and develop interdisciplinary courses so that integration will be there across all the functional disciplines. Then coming to the ambiguity. So ambiguity is a situation where you cannot take a decision, and also you have to take a decision without knowing what is going to happen. So in this case, your agility is very important. Your agility is very important, and responsiveness is very important. So with this, I'll give you 2-3 important points from the uh, government university perspective. The curriculum is very important. Curriculum design, redesign. We have to redesign, rethink, revisit, relook, reorient, so many things. So rebuild all these things. So in this aspect, so we have to bring a beautiful curriculum, taking into consideration of industry professionals. So because we have to prepare socially responsible managers, so how do they fit into the industry environment? What kind of requirements industry is going to have? It is going to change continuously. There is no constant. Change is constant. So how do you fit the manager, socially responsible manager, to the industry, so that the curriculum is very important? That's one aspect. The second aspect is delivery. So delivery, how do you deliver the aspect and assessment? So you have a quality accreditation and other agents, NAC and all other agents are there. But in this online teaching and digital platform, so accreditation, how accreditation is going to happen, that is a big challenge now. Then third point is internships. So internships also one of the important challenges that we are facing. So the online, now we have converted to online internships. So many companies are not coming forward to give online internship because of their limitations. So that this is also one of the important challenges. Then coming to the pedagogical methods in the sense delivery assessment. So pedagogical methods, the faculty need to reorient them and change the new environment, and they have to deliver accordingly. Otherwise, the student engagement and faculty engagement is going to be mismatched. Coming to the flexibility, project-based learning. So we need to look at the project-based learning. So many top business schools, they are going to have a project-based learning, and that is very important. And finally, outcome-based education. That already we have started this thing, student-focused learning and teaching learning process, how it is going to change, and how we are going to adopt this outcome-based education. So this is very important. So with this, we'll continue our discussion. Prasad.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. You have very detailedly explained the length and breadth of the education system, particularly in the context of government organizations. I think you have a big challenge, lying ahead. We will come back to you, sir. I have a few questions further to discuss on that. But I really liked, what you said. You redefined VUCA. VUCA was volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. You changed it to vision, understanding, and collaboration and agility. Thank you very much, sir. It's a new dimension you brought in. I will go to Ramesh Revuru. Ramesh, you have been, with the industry for more than 25 years. You are a computer expert and, you're a system expert. You have been doing a lot of sessions across. What do you think is the current education system challenges, particularly with respect to the IT industry? That too in the leadership.
Okay. I'll answer, more to do with the IT industry and how we see COVID, and then come to your question of, what's the gap that we see in terms of education that's being imparted, and, what, we see as something, missing when, they reach us to work with us in the industry. So to start off with, IT industry has survived the dot-com bust. We've seen two recessions. When I say, I myself, have witnessed, two recessions. The reason why I mention that is, while, we're talking about a VUCA world today, IT industry not just survived, but, thrived, through these recessions, and the dot-com bust. Now, by no means am I saying the situation we have today is simple or easy to manage. We have a tough task on hand, and as the eminent panel rightly pointed out, it's the unknown unknown that we're dealing with. Industries that we operate in as L&T Group, be it manufacturing, automotive, oil and gas, travel, hospitality, have all been hit by COVID. And when a situation of that nature arises, customers start relooking at their budgets and the money that is available for them to spend on projects. And projects here, I mean IT projects. So when the budgets get cut, you're looking at spending the limited dollars that you have on what is business essential, business critical, and hence the unit that I manage here at L&T, the digital unit happens to be the one that is one of those business critical operations that companies use the limited budgets that they now have to invest more, do more of digital transformations, automation being one of those key elements, but looking at a variety of levers to get more out of less. So with that, I agree with one of the panel member who said look at this as an opportunity. This is a phenomenal opportunity for IT and in particular digital that I belong to. And hence, I see this as an opportunity where probably we're struggling with more than what we can chew. With customers reaching out to us for a variety of programs that they want to go after and launch immediately, and derive the benefits out of that. Now, coming to your question of education, in the management institutes and the gap that we see in terms of leadership. I have a little different take on that, and this is probably true with any education. Education can probably tell you the theory behind what could be the various scenarios in which how you go about dealing certain patterns that the education tries to evolve and give you a suggestion in terms of how you deal with those patterns. And when you come to the real world, a lot of what you learn in the institutes is knowledge that will help you probably understand the situation. But then when it comes to implementation and applying that knowledge is where it is bringing together of the knowledge that you've gained through these educational institutes, but more importantly, that experience of knowing what paths to take. And I think this came up in the earlier points as well. You have to do your hypothesis testing, and for your ability to do hypothesis testing is where experience matters, and that is something that you learn over a period of time. But even for those who are just entering the industry, the ability to put your hypothesis together, the ability to think of your plan B and carve out a de-risking strategy is what will help not just in this situation but any situation. So I think broadly those are my points, Prasad.
Excellently articulated, Ramesh. I think that's the need of the hour, to use whatever the limited dollars for essentials. That is definitely a good takeaway. And I have, of course, a few thoughts on the kind of experiential learning or de-risking, what you said. I'll certainly come back to you after I talk to our Kashyap. Kashyap is waiting for a long time there. Kashyap, you are an entrepreneur by yourself. You have been taking up a lot of innovation stuff with Startup Grind and other stuff. Okay. Now with the kind of challenges in the supply and demand, particularly. So how do you think that the VUCA world is, the education system or this thing, how do you see from your entrepreneur kind of perspective?
Yeah, I mean, for us, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. So this is business as usual for us. I mean, for startups, I think we love solving problems. So every new problem is a new opportunity for us. That's how the entire startup world. Most of them, at least the ones that I know of, they look at this period to be an absolute, a boon because of productivity. A lot of us sit at home and, we don't need to travel. So it saves a lot of, time to go to our workplace and, all those bahanas, all of those, otherwise you have a lot of bahanas. So right now, I think we effectively have 10 hours in our hand. I mean, of course, there are a few other things that are happening. Like there's more household work that comes in, and a lot of pressure from people at home. But I think the positive side that I see, like at least from a small and medium enterprise and startup perspective, that is what I bring in, is that we have become at least 2 times more productive ever since we started working from home. And we've gotten like two I mean, our users have actually increased. I mean, they've doubled because we run a digital learning platform ourselves. So corona for us did a lot of good actually. So we spent like 2 years of time to get our learning platform into a lot of engineering colleges, and we struggled a lot. And now the positive side of things is like people now need digital learning. People, the very fact that we're using Zoom right now, and haven't done this at a physical place. Otherwise, all of us would have spent some time to travel to a physical place, and all that stage and mic and all that setting. So for tech companies, especially the ones like using digital transformation, I mean digital learning, or any of these platforms that are online IT platforms, it's actually become very easy for us to sell things to customers. And especially we used to travel all the way to colleges that are remotely there somewhere in the city, and it used to waste a lot of time. For me, like that perspective of connecting to a customer right on in online medium, and just do B2B sales as an IT SaaS platform, for me it has like been a boon. So firstly, for me, like I just love this the last 2-3 months. I mean, so as an entrepreneur in the area of e-learning and learning platform, we did a phenomenal job. Firstly, coming to your the other question of management education, I don't think I have the right qualification to speak on it, but I do hire a lot of people from B schools. I hire people from Narsi Monji and few other B schools. What I have been seeing of late is like one of the things in education that I have noticed, people's ability to question things, the right way of asking questions. So that is very common, whether it's an engineering education or management education. We see people with, I think Professor John initially spoke about growth mindset. That is something that we really write in our company in bold, in really big letters, because growth mindset is like the prerequisite to any startup. I mean, for a big company, maybe it is a luxury, but for a startup, it's an obligation. I mean, we need to have growth mindset. Otherwise, we just cannot, stand. We cannot just breathe, because we have to, have that growth mindset. So for that, like one of the most prerequisite things that I look for when I hire people, especially freshers from B schools, we've had like some people from IIT, the management schools from IITs, like the Vinod Gupta School of Management, and we've actually had good hires last year. So I see like a techno managerial kind of skills. Like we hire people typically with some business analytics skills who can think. So analytical skills becomes very important. We cannot just have managers who just manage these days. So I'm one of those guys who actually don't like hiring managers unless they bring in like one or two more skills apart from managing. Though managing people and team skills are important. Since I come from the tech world, and we run we typically run a very tech savvy company. We look for people who can typically very very good with Excel skills, analyzing data, skills like that. And I see a lot more companies when they hire, I think they are looking for a techno managerial roles these days, as compared to pure play. And I think Professor S.S. Rao, I think also initially mentioned that we don't have like a HR function or a marketing function. It's also like a case where we need hybrid people. I mean, we need people who are like product management mindset, because product manager is someone who talks to almost all the verticals of a company. I mean, in an IT company, a product manager typically talks to the tech team, the marketing team, the operations team, the DevOps team. So there are so many kind of verticals in a company, and I think the one of the most probably highly paid techno management jobs are I think product management roles, which is closely aligned to managing projects and talking to people. So it is something that is a hybrid role, which is sort of an amalgamation of pure play management skills along with technology management skills, right? So I think that is going to be the future of management to me, where people can actually find solutions. So I see managers to be solution architects, and not just delegate things to people, because I think when you scale up more and more in your career, you can delegate. But I think more relevant kind of roles that I see for freshers is a role of a solution architect, which is mainly like you actually solve the problem, and you actually then delegate it to people and say, this is probably what you should go ahead and do. So that is my 2 cents on management education.
Thanks, Kashyap. It was very detailed and liked, the way you explained it. So I would like to go to Professor Prasad Rao Garu. Sir, if you look at the current education system, the way an institution is measured, it is basically measured on how many placements that institution is able to give. And when we are talking about the industry is saying that we want leaders, we want people who can take care of the uncertainty, who can lead uncertainty, then is there not a gap between these two? And that is my first question. The second question is this a right time for anybody to join MBA?
Yes, sir. Actually, this is the very right time to join MBA, because now we are all in the VUCA world, and the years to come also will be 100% disruptions. We have been talking about disruptions for the last almost 7 to 8 years. For the year, first time the 2K problem, Y2K problem, then 2 times IT boom, recession, etc. Every time we are finding new opportunities. So these disruptions these kind of challenges are giving opportunities to take it to the next level. So next level organizations are coming up, doing something different and able to impact to a certain extent, and then giving way to other companies. So this is very, very right time to do MBA, because everybody will realize, will consolidate their learnings and try to understand what is that we need to do. Because the do-how is more important than know-how. That do-how is possible with this kind of experiences and expectations mindset. And another important thing, every student should have entrepreneurial mindset. If he is employed somewhere, he should be working like an entrepreneur. If he works for himself, he has to work like an entrepreneur. That entrepreneurial mindset is very, very important now, because it is not the obligation of the only promoter. Every employee, every member of the organization should work collectively. That's why it's a team, they say. It's not a group, it's a team. It's a team activity that they can understand only the students who done their MBA from a business school. A business school actually minimizes the gap between what is expected in the industry and what is being taught here. So business school education definitely will help. But unfortunately, there are only 20 to 100 business schools, proper business schools in India. Then what about the rest? They are all milling machines. Like they are not giving that much importance for the practicality and application oriented and do-how element more important. Because that is missing out to a greater extent. But now, even that kind of institutions also are spending huge amount of money on developing the technology infrastructure. Coming days, AR and VR may be also implemented in a business school to teach. It is the order of the day. So business school education is important, and definitely it will prepare the students to lead the organization from the front, and definitely they should also develop the entrepreneurial mindset. And the companies also choosing the guys who have good attitude and who are actually prepared for doing that, because man is to think and machine is to work. Unfortunately, man is stopped thinking and machine is working like anything. Machine is actually thinking. That's what artificial intelligence is doing. But what about the natural instinct of a human being? We have to think. That scope is important. That's why we particularly advocate that there should be a blended learning. Not only online learning. Online learning is a tool for communication, but all the skills cannot be transferred. But blended learning is important. Learner-centered education is important. That's what most of the business schools already realized. And definitely they will prepare the students to meet the challenges in the days to come. Okay, so business school education only can do that, but not ordinary colleges. That promoters or the universities should start realizing what is that we are doing. It's not standardized. Education should not be standardized. It should be customized. And the customization you can find only in the top business schools. So I really strongly agree, sir. There is a good demand for business school education, and most of the students are also taking up this, even for setting up their own business, because of the curriculum is centered around the entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial mindset. Prasad Garu, over to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I had some internet connection issues. I will go to Professor John. John, you would say that there is a growth mindset, experiential learning, and iteration. Can you little bit explain more in detail about the growth mindset, how you are inculcating that in the students?
Very, very good question, Prasad Garu. So there are three components to encouraging growth mindset. And this has to be thought through in terms of how do you create learning opportunity for MBA participants. And the way we do is focusing on leadership intelligence, number one, because as earlier you said, and one of the panel members said, that we are in the business of preparing leaders, yeah? And essentially that means that each MBA participant has to transcend beyond individual orientations to look at some common goods, and how do we create that? Yeah. So we are located in Chennai, and we are surrounded by lots of village. So we take our MBA participants to village and allow them to immerse into the challenges of rural livelihood in the villages. And from there, they have to understand from the villagers' perspective, what are the challenges, and that becomes the focus for a group of 6 or 8 students to start talking to the villagers. They are their consumers, understand their problems, and communicate among themselves and become much more self-aware. So that's number one. Number two is, even though we are talking about the problem in a village, which is a very local, can we take a global perspective? What is the kind of knowledge available? What's the kind of technologies which can be used? What the kind of solutions which can be used? And so that's what we do. Stay low. There seems to be some problems there.
Go ahead, sir. You are audible. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So that's where we start looking at how do we create a set of, based on customers' understanding of their challenges, how do we start exploring with solutions which may work? We develop a criteria, design criteria for solutions, and that allows us to look at creative solutions. We bring them together, and finally we create integration intelligence. During MBA program, we create a series of framework in different disciplinary functional areas. So how do we help the participants to integrate different functional as well as conceptual frameworks to put customer in the center and develop the solutions for them and get feedback from the customers so that you can modify the solutions, iterate through it, and then help it to get there. So to summarize, what we are talking about is, by design, we encourage learning mindset by helping them to go out into the big bad world and understand from their customer's perspective what are the challenges, learn it. We try to create broad repertoire of experiences, frameworks, mental tools. And last but not the least, how do we help them to put themselves in the customer's shoe, customer empathy? So this is how we create a prepared mind, which is growth mindset, and they understand that they are not fixated with the solution, but they are obsessed about the problem. And that's what they have to solve. And so what are we trying to do? We are trying to inculcate that life is a journey of learning. And therefore, that's the outlook which we bring in. We put them in uncertain situation and we say that, hey, accept the uncertainty. Accept that you are to learn from those uncertain, chaotic situations and seek for new experience, seek for new solutions, seek for new understanding from the customer's perspective, and build a broad experience of repertoire which can be used to put small bets on the solutions rather than putting big bet and fail. Fail fast. Failing fast is very important because you should not be afraid of failing. And the failing is not from your perspective of solution, but hey, what we developed is not working for the customer. And that's where we collect feedback from them. We manage risk not through analysis, we manage risk through action. Action with the customer so that we understand that, hey, it works, it doesn't work. Play small bets rapidly, quickly, succeed from the customer's perspective and then scale. So that's the growth mindset which we create. And it's not based on lectures. It's based on putting the participants there in the deep sea and allowing them to swim. And we say that, hey, whenever you are scared of drowning, raise your hand and we will throw the lifeboat for you and pick you up. Is that all right?
Excellent, excellent. It really, I felt like as if I'm listening to a Zen monk. A Zen philosophy of, accepts uncertainty as reality. These are all, a Zen philosophy.
Yeah.
But, this is a real interesting model. Probably the other institutions may have limitations to adapt to this model that easily. But I think at least a few of our institutions.
Let me take a minute. I don't think, what are we trying to do? We are saying that classroom learning has limitation. Can we put the learner in the real field? Real field need not be village. Real field would be
anything.
defining your which customer's problem you want to understand. Actually, what we do is we go and get sponsors. For example, Hindustan Unilever says that, hey, we have to go out to the rural area. You help us to understand how our products would sell. So what we need to do is get sponsors from the customer, client, who are the Hindustan Unilever or others. They have their product, and we are developing customized way of
Solutions. Right.
developing solutions. So every business school should do that, where we are saying that let's take the learners out in the big bad world and understand how to grapple with the challenges in the big bad world. Bring them in. So the difference between business education and other education is business education is praxis oriented. It's practice.
Right.
Solution through practice,
Yeah.
It's not through conceptual knowledge, and that's where we are different.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jan. I'd like to go to Ramesh. Ramesh, I want to put you on the spot here. Basically, all the major organizations, we talk about process orientation, you talk about CMM level 5, you talk about all these things. And at the same time, you have been expecting innovation from the management schools. The moment a guy comes into your organization, you just put him to go through the process. Now tell me, how is it that you are encouraging innovation for that?
Okay, so thanks for putting me on the spot, Prasad. And this is one of those favorite debates that we have within the company as well, as to are we giving enough opportunities for these kids coming from either a management institute or an engineering institute to come with fresh energy, ideas, and help bring innovation. Towards that, I can probably talk about what we have done within L&T, and you briefly mentioned Zen. So Zen has the concept called beginner's mindset, which is known as Shoshin, as it is referred to as. Now, Shoshin is a concept that we have imbibed within the organization in a big way. I launched a mobile app by name Shoshin for the workforce of digital, which is about 6,000 odd employees, to help promote innovation. Now, what the concept of beginner's mindset is essentially to have inquisitiveness in you, to be able to learn new things, and that is something that we believe not just towards the beginning part of your career, but at different phases of your career, you should have, and that's the only way you'll be able to bring innovation to the table. And like somebody rightly pointed out, we are into a team sport, we're not into an individual sport, and hence only when all the hands come together will we be able to see success. Now, going back to the example of Shoshin mobile app is one avenue where these kids who come in have the opportunity to go and present their ideas through the interface that we provided in the form of mobile app. Now, we are hungry for billability, we are hungry for utilization, and some of those terms refer to outside the IT world are you sitting on bench, are you working on a project? At any given point in time, IT companies work with a utilization of about 75 to 80%, 80% being on the higher side. Most of the companies operate in 75 to 77. So you have 23 to 25% of your workforce who is not working on a project. And we have this concept of work and home. When you're on a project, you're at work, and when you're not on project, you're at home. And the workforce which is at home is, if we're talking about digital, which is about 6,000 odd employees, we're talking about at a given point in time 1,200 to 1,500 employees who are not working on a customer engagement, and thereby that's the workforce that can contribute towards innovation. Now, a lot of the grads who come in for a good 6 months period to 9 months do not get built onto engagements for the simple reason that customers like those people who bring experience onto the table, and hence we put these people onto those engagements. Like I said, the app gives them an avenue to place their ideas into the through the interface to a team that then starts pulling together those ideas and then says, these are the ideas that we believe you guys should go ahead, form your own teams, and come up with solutions that you bring to a minimum viable product that you can demonstrate. Once they do that is where we take it to the next level. So there's a unit within the company called NWOF, New Ways of Working. So New Ways of Working NWOF team takes those ideas that these kids have put together and then presents it to the sales community. And if they believe there is enough strength behind these ideas to take it to market, they get the right funding and the investments from the company to go make it big in terms of going ahead and making it large enough that you can sell in the market. Now that I believe is a true way to encourage people who have these bright ideas to bring those ideas not just conceptually into a forum, but build on top of it, take it to the next level. If the idea is really sellable, give them the investment that is required to complete it and then take it to market. I think those are the avenues. Yes, we do struggle to ensure that there are more people billable, but units that are sizable, like I said, have enough bandwidth that anyways is unutilized, that can be used for these.
Thank you, Ramesh. So you, at your organization, you have been doing something interesting to keep the innovation going. That is, that's really commendable. Keep it up. I'll go to Kashyap. I'll ask exactly the opposite question. How is he managing the process? Kashyap, you are
Okay.
the fresher, the innovative kind of people. How do you manage process here? What kind of tools do you require from management to help you there?
I mean, we use all very simple process management tools like WhatsApp. So we expect that people are, very attentive and we run after them. So we don't prefer using tools that make one very unproductive, because we tried using some process management tools and then the productivity actually went down. Then we did, the VUCA world. I think we need to adapt to, the preferences of your, at least the 60 to 70%, people that you have. So we run, teams with less than 50 people. So our overall, strength of our company is, roughly about 35. So for us, the best way to keep track of things is we use tools like Slack, Asana, which is also a project management tool, but I mean, just for the tech team. But I think all the management team, we rely heavily on WhatsApp groups. We have typical protocols like the timing of what to post, when to post, and all that. But I think processes in terms of purely the product management things, I think process plays a key role, because especially in an agile environment, like for us, like we're not building on products that are already making a lot of money like L&T does. We are building products that are actually not there yet. So we are trying to figure the market fit, and we are building that MVP, and we want to, so I always say one thing, like, build the right thing before you build it right. Because most of us, like, we don't know what is the right thing. And that is where I think we need to spend a lot of time talking to our customers. And so all those, efforts in trying to understand whether what you're doing is actually worth doing it. Because as startups, I've seen like 90% of them, or probably more, fail only because, most of us think what we're doing is really great until we realize that, it's actually not the right fit. But, that is again the 22. I mean, it's a very hard thing to, figure out like whether what you're doing is right, because it's new. And the fact that you're a startup means that you're innovative and you're doing something a little differently than what others are not doing. So having said that, I think the most difficult thing is actually to figure out what is your MVP, because a lot of them think MVP is the maximum valuable product and not the minimum viable product, and they end up spending a lot of resources in creating that maximum value. I think experience there, the management education perhaps plays a role there. If just one thing, that you need to listen to your customers, and you actually need to listen to your customers very honestly. A lot of us, we have that bias. We only listen what we want to listen. That is one mistake that we do as startups. So the ones who actually learned the hard way and failed a lot of times, they understand this very well, that you need to listen in a very unbiased way without prejudices, and you need to design your entire flow of product or service in such a way that you can actually listen to your customers. You create that entire process flow in such a way. So in our company, we actually talk to our customers on a daily basis. So every single day we have a rating on our Play Store, and a lot of them write very bad ratings. They give 1 star to us, and then we ask them what's wrong. And so for us, every day there's a new process, and process comes in because of the necessity due to the customer. So for example, we made an entire process for review management, like how many times you need to actually talk to a customer, and who actually talks to them, and what time they talk to, and then you have a process because you realize it over a period of time, right? So that's how we generally work.
You're having an experiential process,
yeah.
learning as a process. That's interesting. Right. That's really good. So I'll go to Professor Acharyul Garu. Sir, you said you have to have new norms for that. The next generation, once you open up your colleges and other things, and you said, from the delivery perspective, you have challenges. So how are you going to handle challenges of delivery, sir? Particularly, you said ethical systems, assessment and things like that. So can you just throw a little bit more light on that?
So regarding the classroom, I'll start with the classroom. So we are now, since we have to maintain social distance and masks, we have to use the mask and then sanitizing environments and all. So we are dividing into 2 batches. And first batch is going to be half of the people, 30 people will be there, and the remaining 30 people will be there now coming in odd days. So like the seniors will be in odd days, juniors will be in even days. So that we are going to maintain a social distance, and also creating hygiene environment, and also taking all precautions. That is one aspect. The second one is regarding this. What is the question, sir? Can you repeat once again?
No. How are you going to manage your assessment?
Assessment, okay. Assessment, actually, there are guidelines from university, UGC. University Grants Commission. So the assessment pattern is going to change from time to time. So that's why we have internal assessment and external assessment. Now, because of this COVID environment, so now we are trying to take the guidelines of UGC, see that there are 50% weightage to the external examination and 50% weightage to the internal examination. And also, as a special case, we are trying to give some kind of leverage to the students, in the sense not deviating the university UGC regulations. So we are trying to incorporate some kind of factoring, so that they can be promoted. The final year students cannot be delayed. So, and also the examination, the score will be given. And recently, today only there is a guideline from UGC that examination should be conducted for the final year students. That's the recent guideline. So actually, we are thinking that based on the previous past performance, we are going to give us some weightage and internal some weightage. So but that is not the case here. Again, we have to conduct the examination in June, and then we have to take the internal examination score, and then we have to give a grade. That's one. So assessment part is not a problem.
Great, sir. Thank you very much. I'll go to Professor Prasad Rao Garu. Sir, there is a question here on the chart from Sudhakar. He's working. He's a DGM for BPCL, Sudhakar Babu Garu. Next question is, do you agree that management schools should invite senior and experienced people more often from the industry to share the practical experience of managing marketing, supply chain, etc.?
Sir, I agree with Sudhakar Garu 100%. That is actually very much essential for the current students. First of all, many students are not able to write even a page, one page of their project report. Most of the students are, going to USA, United States of Amirpet, taking projects, and copying, submitting. What is this, They are not actually producing on their own. First, they should create at least one page on their own. Teachers, at the end of the day, becoming very lenient and giving them a piece of paper. It's only a piece of paper. Degree or a graduation, patta is a piece of paper. They are not able to do anything. And that is possible only with the combination of both teachers and experts from the industry. That's very, very essential. I go by, his suggestion 100%. That's why most of the business schools now recruiting faculty who have been with industry for some time and coming back to academic institute to share their, thoughts or insights. If they are not able to bear that expenditure, because industry experts, do not come just like that. We have to pay. It's very expensive. If we wish to attract good, quality people, we have to equally pay for them. And most of the institutions are not able to pay their, basic things. How can we expect they invite people and spend some money? For the last 5 years, there is a drastic reduction of inviting experts to the institutions. Drastically, you can check it across the country. Very few institutions are inviting people from the industry and making them part of the delivery system. But around 80% are not at all involving them because the cost cutting. See, what is that, this is only know-how transfer, not do-how transfer. The do-how transfer is only possible with people involved with, industry experts. Like the companies cannot come to class and classroom cannot go to company. But that bridge can be gapped with the people come and, share their experiences with the industry. With the students. That is, a very important point. And another important thing, we have to see that the students do everything on their own and evaluation also should be 100% customized. We should allow them doing something and come to class and share that gyan with the rest of the students. So peer-to-peer evaluation should be introduced. But how many students are actually ready for that? So we should not standardize, we should customize and invite people from the industry, make them part of the delivery mechanism and also make the students, work with the industry professionals as mentors. Not only teacher mentor, there should be industry mentor so that they'll understand and all the students may not prefer the same industry. Some students may prefer IT, some may prefer, operations, some may prefer marketing, some may prefer HR. So we need to identify people and assign them. Let them be shadow followers of the industry leaders. Definitely that will help the business school also grow. That's why Great Lakes started very late recently, but it has come to the top level because of the pedagogy they follow, because of the people like John sir and all and I know Bala very well. That vision is important. That kind of things only are important now, not the run of the mill type. So I strongly believe and agree with that statement, sir.
Very good, sir. Thank you very much. I will go with the same question to Professor John. John, do you think that is an expense? Is it an expense to get the people? Should you look at it as a cost or an investment? You can also answer, sir. Once he answers, I will come back to you, Prasad Rao Garu, to answer the same question. Why are we looking at it as cost? To get the seniors or professionals from the industry and share their experiences with the education system, institutions, is it really a cost? That's the question, sir.
Let me go back to the concept which I articulated, that business education is praxis. Yeah, it has to be put into practice. Now, that's where many good business schools have created a chair professorship for practice. Yeah, so they are inviting experienced, articulate professionals from the industry and asking them, hey, are you interested in coming and sharing your practice-oriented knowledge with students? Yeah. And in our Great Lakes, we have a practice where we invite all of them to come and spend, depending on their availability. Some of them come for the weekend and spend 3 days. Some of them would say that I am able to put 1 week for you. And then we encourage them to spend enough time. And that creates a good bonding between the learner and the practitioners, you know. Because many a time what happens in business schools is that you create a kind of conceptual framework which is devoid of how would you implement it. So we talked about creating an integration between leadership development, the local to global perspective, and then integration. The second part of the curriculum or education is invite practitioners from the industry. Share, let them work with the participants and allow participants to reframe the challenges and then see how has it been solved in the real life situation. The third one is where we have a practice where we send participants to international arena. What we are saying is that, hey, not only you need to know your own market, can you go and start working in a market which you don't understand? So growth mindset is consciously trying to put them in different contexts where they are not comfortable. How do you push them out of their comfort zone and then help them to figure out what do you do? So that's very important. So I don't see this as a cost. I see this as a resource which every good business school should have access, and they should continuously build a network of great practitioners who are very articulate, who could reflect on their experience and then convert that experience into teachable and learnable opportunity for the participants. Thank you very much for this good question.
Thank you, sir. I will go to Ramesh now. I will ask him again. Ramesh, what Prasad Raghu was saying was, you guys come at very high cost. Is it not the a social corporate social responsibility for all of you to go back to schools and do something?
Yes. So CSR. In fact, honestly speaking, maybe we should not call it CSR, Prasad. But I'll share a couple of my own experiences of how we've interacted with the universities, colleges, and how we've engaged them. When I was with the product company Computer Associates in Hyderabad, there was a program at that time. I don't know if the program is still there. It was probably the brainchild of YSR, and the program is all about the initiative is called Jawahar Knowledge Centers, JKC, and as part of that, you go and pick up the number of students that you would want from the colleges, depending on your appetite of how much you can consume. And for a period of 1 year, which is the last year of their graduation, they work with the company, which means the final year entirely is with Computer Associates, and it's a win-win situation for both. We get resources at a much cheaper cost for us, and hence for the work that we want to get done, we utilize these kids who are in their final year to get our work delivered. And at the same time, for the kids who are coming out of these colleges, it's a great opportunity to be on a real life project and learn more than being on a real life project. It is also about mingling with folks who've been in the industry and have the experience of delivering to customer commitments. And hence, and I found that program as a great way of bringing talent from colleges into the corporate world, and thereby both corporate and the universities and colleges benefiting in that way. Now, I in fact extended that program last year to come up with what I call that offering no to pay. Essentially, it is telling customers you don't have to pay, so say no to pay, and the model is we are transparent with the customer that this is work that we will get done through final year graduates, and for the work that we get done through the final year graduates, we don't charge customer even a single dime. Now, this is a strategy where for the customer whose purse strings are today constrained, some of them who are running on tighter budgets can get the work delivered. Now they have the stamp of L&T on the project to ensure that quality of the deliverable and commitments in terms of timelines are going to be met. Now we have the advantage of going and grabbing the market share by being able to deliver work at a much cheaper cost than what the other companies are delivering. And this is again, I believe, a win-win where these kids get to work in projects and the projects are getting delivered at probably 1/5 the cost that customers were paying for otherwise engaging IT companies. Now these two similar model, but the other initiative where I'm one of the jury members is the Smart India Hackathon initiative, where it's a beautiful opportunity. I don't know how many universities, colleges actively engage in that. All the departments across the government of India have put out their problem statements that they want solutions to, and encouraging all the university college students to pick up those problem statements of your choice, and it's a wide bouquet of problem statements out there, to go and provide a solution. Those solutions, in fact, being a jury, I've found a good 80% of these kids present solutions which don't mean anything. It's all nonsense getting submitted there. But there are good 15-20% of those solutions which have content in them, and those are the solutions that then get funded by Government of India. Now these are the opportunities that the educational institutes need to look at to see how you engage, rather than calling and saying can you do something free for us.
No, I am not expecting you to do anything free there, but definitely I really appreciate the kind of great work you all been doing. And we really didn't know how 90 minutes passed by. It was a wonderful discussion. It was though I had a list of so many questions listed down, it went like a just very more valuable discussion that could happen because of the contributions from each one of you. So I think just to summarize from my side, everybody most of you have expressed that it's a growth mindset which is more important, and there is an opportunity out there in every adversity, particularly here with this kind of VUCA. And I like the way described by Professor Acharyalu. He gave a new dimension to this VUCA for the way he defined that VUCA as well. So now with this, I thank you once again, all of you, for your wonderful contribution. We certainly look forward to many more such good conversations that we can have. Thanks much, Way, and I would leave it to KK for organizing this and say a few words before we wind up.
Thank you, Prasad. I totally agree, Emil. This is a fantastic session. So many good great ideas. I'm sure it's at least from the conversation that we see on the chat box, there's a lot of information that's very beneficial for students, obviously, to look at what they need to do. And good inputs and questions coming from a lot of faculty as well. This is a fantastic session. I thank you everyone, all the panel members, for your time, taking time and ensuring that this is a success. And I really want to be part of this for more to come in the future. We will figure out other, we can see what best we can do, what are the topics that we can bring in, not just connected with COVID, but things that are definitely needed, that change that is needed in the education side to kind of see what fits the industry. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you all the participants for your time.
Yeah, if anybody wants to say anything, one final word, please go ahead before we sign off. Yes, sir. Prasad Rao, go ahead.
My single statement is the inviting experts from the industry is expensive, no doubt, but it should be treated as investment. Investment is important. We have to invest first, then expect the returns. But without investing, people are expecting results. That's the mindset of most of the entrepreneurs. So we have to, because investment does not mean only in the physical infrastructure. Intellectual capital is more important now. That digital infrastructure is important. And the coming days, most of the people may prefer, virtual reality kind of, technology. So physical movement may come down. Then huge amount of investment is required. Intellectual capital, requirement of intellectual capital and also digital infrastructure. These two things should be taken priority. Then definitely the rest all will fall in line. That's my final word.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Just 1 minute, I would like to add Enda's Prasad Rao sir's words. So my request is that industry should give internships, long-term internships, not short-term internships, so that entire semester they can go for industry. They will spend in the entire 4 months in the entire semester in the industry. They will get to know many things and they will know the work culture and they will also find out the capabilities, and the employers also find out whether he is suitable or not. So that would be my suggestion is that industry should go for some immersion, internship immersion program, so that it's not for 2 months, 3 months, entire semester. So that would be the good thing, that you can save time. You need not give training for them again, so you can recruit them based on their capabilities.
In fact, the JKC program was for 1 full year.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. Once again, I think there's still a lot of questions unanswered. Probably we can have one more session, version 2.0 at some point in the near future. Thank you very much once again.
So thank you all.
Have a great evening, great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much.